Okay, so you may be wondering, why am I wearing a tie today? Well, we're gonna recreate an app in this video. Now, what app exactly? Well, you probably saw from the title of the video. Yeah, we're gonna recreate the TemPad from the Loki TV series. And this is just me dressed up as Loki. With the tie and the... Okay, let's get started. So, I'm not actually Loki, in case you were unaware. I am Muda, and I'm here to teach you how to use Figma. Now, we're gonna recreate this TemPad app mainly for the purposes of teaching you how to set up a design file and how you might want to recreate a design and use a design structure that I typically use when I'm designing. So, we start with setting up our styles or our core. We then go on to building out our components, and then we go on to putting the screens together. Now, I have other videos where we actually go through serious app designs like TikTok or Coinbase, Gojek kind of as well. You should definitely go through those if you want a more serious video on how to like build or craft a UI, a more real world use case focused design tutorial. But if you're interested in the Loki series and you want to learn how to design and have a bit of fun with it, well, this is the video for you. So let's just get started. Also, it would be great if you could subscribe and drop a like and probably leave a comment as well, so I know if you like this video. Okay. So we're going to go through the basics of recreating a UI in Figma. What we have here is, well, we're designing something that might not be a typical app, but we're going to use the same sort of thinking and structure to recreate this sort of design. So this will work for this TemPad, it'll work for any other app. Just take the lessons away and then you can bring it back to something more realistic. But basically we start off with these reference images. So when we're trying to recreate something, it's really good to have a reference. If you can get the real screenshots, that's great. If you have a picture or like a photo of the screenshots, I guess that's the next best thing, which is basically what we have. Once you have all your references, you need to start setting up your design in a structure that works. So this is the structure that I always use. It's tried, it's tested. And yeah, let's just go through it really quickly. So we start off by setting up the core system or the core structure. Now, usually for this app in particular, we'll have the icons, the logo, and the typography. The icons and the logo I've already gone through before this whole thing, but in this video, we will look through the typography. And then we have our components now. Our components just make it easier for us to reuse certain elements of a screen. So that would be, in our case, the buttons, the icon bar, and the status bar. And then we have more complex systems or complex structures, which would be the templates. We have the graph. We also have a video player in our screenshots, but I'm not going to work on that in this video. Now, for the screens that we're going to end up putting together to make this prototype run the way that we want it to, we're going to recreate the home screen. I want to do the low bat, but I don't think there's enough time, and it's a bit more about UI and prototyping, so we won't go through that today. But I do want to recreate the graph screens, and I want to create the mission profile, which, if you haven't seen, is basically this image here where Hunter C20 is pronounced deceased. But anyway, let's get into the design. So yeah, this is what will work. This is what we'll walk through, and let's just get started with recreating the home screen, which is this. This is the home screen, in case you were unaware. Now, the reason these images are blurry is because it's taking Figma a while to load the images up because I just opened it. That's fine. We'll still be able to work with what we've got. And if we need to, I might end up pasting the image back in and finding it. But basically, this is what we got. So let's go into our working file or our working page. Now I've already done this, but when I built this, it is missing a lot of the key elements that we need. So we're gonna go ahead and recreate this. Yeah. So let's move this out of the way for now. Okay. So when I like to recreate a screen, I like to break it down into what the different elements of the screen are going to be, or like what the different components of the screen structure are. So what we have here is an icon button. We have 4 icon buttons, so the time door, miss minutes, settings, and directory. What we have on the side is a status bar. I'm not sure what any of these icons mean. It might be an app bar, but it's really unclear. But we do have also this date bar, which is this thing at the bottom. It just basically shows the date. And then we have this menu. Now, this menu was designed for, just based off of the way the UI is constructed, it was designed for a cursor type of interface. And for some reason, it just followed through, or in this Loki world, you know, they don't have a UX designer and they just reuse the components that they have. And so we have this sort of select program, and then you have to select which one you want to tap on. But yeah, this is what we've got, and it's a touch interface. But just know that this isn't a standard menu. Don't follow this. And then we have like this key background grid, which is all these boxes behind the main interface, and then we also have this logo in the corner. Now, I thought this logo would be like imprinted, just an imprinted part of the screen, but it turns out it's used quite randomly, and it either shows up in the corner or it moves around. But yeah, so it turns out this isn't an imprint, it's actually part of the available pixels. Now, for the grid, I did a count earlier. There are 20, I don't know why I wrote 26, but there are 33 squares going across and 16 squares going down. Now, what we don't know in all of this is what is the actual size of this container. And just by looking at it, it looks like it has, you know, similar dimensions to an iPhone, and because I have access to an iPhone, it's what we're going to use as our reference. So I've already set this up with an iPhone frame, and we're going to recreate this. So let's get into that. Now, these icons I've already set up, but the typography that we're going to use I have not set up. So let's get into setting this up first. So just to make it easier, I'm going to steal elements from the screen that we already worked on, or that I already worked on. And so I'm going to take this action list, which is the same text style as the select program and options, run program, and clear cache. And I understand that these are different colors, but when we talk about text styles, we just need the size and the font that we're using. Now we also have this text style for the icon button, so let's drag that across. And then we have this text style for the date status, or the date bar. So we essentially have these 3 different types of text styles, and I'm just reordering it into a more structured manner. But so basically, when you're recreating, or when you're creating text styles, you have a hierarchy, and I am going to go into an old file that I have. And okay, so this is my personal design system that I use. And we're basically just here to see the structure of what a type scale might look like. So I tend to set up an H1, which is used for titles, and H2, which is used for subtitles. H3 is used for headings, H4, paragraph headings. And then we have the paragraph body and captions. So I don't know if we'll be able to use this sort of H1, H2, H3, H4 leveling of our typography, but we can do our best and we can adjust it as we go, move forward with things. Now, how we're gonna create these text styles is using this plugin called Text Styles Generator. So let's go back. And what we have to do is we have to set the name. So set the name of H1, H2, H3, and then we can quickly generate text styles based off of that. So let's go ahead and call this H1. We'll just call it title/header. And then we have this secondary, but I wouldn't call it an H2 because I think there might be something else in these designs that is bigger than the H3, so we'll just call H3. Actually, H3 could possibly be body, so let's just go ahead and call this body, and then or call it paragraph body, and then our final size seems more like a caption or a label, but let's call it H6. Let's call it H6 label. Okay, let's bring up our UI. Now I'm using Opera GX, and the reason I'm doing that is so that I can have this dark mode because it is currently 10:30 at night, and I don't want to strain my eyes. So if you want to use it, you can use Opera GX, but if some things are a bit hard to see, I apologize, but here we go. We're gonna align this left. You don't have to do that, but I just wanted to. I'm gonna select everything, and then I will basically run the text styles generator plugin. So let's go find it. Here we go. Generate text styles. Okay. So now we have 3 text styles were created. If we look into our text styles, we can see we have H1, H6, and paragraph. I'm just gonna move these around. Wait a minute. Okay, we have a slight issue because this is now a header and I don't want that. So let's delete this and replace this with just title because I don't want things to be in folders. There's always a good reason to have folders, just right now it's not something that I want to put our styles in. So let's generate that without the slash, and here we go, we have this here. Okay, now I can start reordering things. So H1 title is at the top, H6 label, and then paragraph body. Oh, actually, H6 label should be below paragraph body. So there we go. Those are our text styles. Now, if we want to use this, we can go here, and then I can quickly, if I tap on the style label, I can get a paragraph body or H6 label. Yeah, and then we can just quickly reuse this whenever we need. So we have our typography. Let's make a header for this. Now we're gonna keep adding to this as we design our screens. It's just right now this is what we have. So let's call this typography. Let's delete that. And now we can go on to recreating our components. So I already have all the icons, I already have the logo. Let's go into building our components. So we have the buttons. So let's start with the one that's obvious to us, which is this icon button. Now, because we don't have the actual screenshots and we just have this photograph, I've taken some liberties with the design. And this might not be accurate, but it looks pretty darn good. So let's recreate this based off of what I already set up. Now, in order to create our button, let's make a section here for components. Okay, in order to create our button, we have our elements, which is the icon in this case, and we also have the label at the bottom. So basically our component is an icon plus a label, and then we're good to go. So I've already created the icons here. I've given them all a icon, the word icon at the start of their name, and this is important because when we go on to use this or when we want to change it around, I can tap here and we have all these icons that I can swap in and out. So yeah, I can easily swap these in and out. Now I'm gonna just delete this one first. And let's create an icon button with the time door to start. So I'm going to drag this icon over, and what I know is that the label is 8 pixels below. So we're just going to create our text layer here, call it label for now, or whoops, and we're going to put it 8 pixels below. So what I do is I bring it close to here, and then I'll knock it down 8 pixels. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now there's a faster way to do this, so I'm going to bring this back up. What you have to do is you have to go to this Figma icon at the top left, go to your preferences, change your nudge amount, and then we want to change our nudge to 8. And then small nudge is 1. So the way you use the big nudge is that you hold shift and then you tap down, and then that will move your object by the amount of pixels. Yeah, by this amount of pixels basically. Okay, so let's give this the color that it needs. So if you're trying to recreate this, you can just grab the color code through an eyedropper or select a random color to your choosing. So you can come here and you can set the color, and yeah, you can choose your type of orange. So this is pretty similar to what I have already, but I've actually set up my own color library. And so what I can do here is I can scroll down to the color that I want to use, which is part of this fuel yellow set, and I believe I'm using fuel yellow 80. So if we look at this, yeah, this is 80 and this is also 80. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to also add a effect style. So if we look at our reference, all the images or all the text has a bit of a orange glow around it. I've already created this orange glow effect. We're not going to touch that in this video, but I will show you how to use it. So I'm just going to click on this. I've already labeled it orange glow, and it's a +1 orange glow. Let's see, does this have an orange glow on it? Okay, the icons already have an orange glow on it. So yeah, now all that I have to do is I have to group these together as a single component. I'm going to center it first, and then I'm going to turn this into a component. So first we want to put this into a frame. Now if you want to put this into a frame, let's see, let's turn on my assets. Yeah. If you want to turn this into a frame, you hold, okay, so this is what you hold. Let's close this. Okay, if you want to turn this into a frame, you hold Command, Option, and guess what? It's G. Okay. If you want to just turn it into a group, you can hold Command and G. I don't recommend this because the constraints are a bit weird, so maybe I'll explain it later, but just take my word for it. You want to hold Option Command G, and if you're on on a Windows, you can hold control. So let's go find your control. Whoops. Okay, I don't know where my control is, but basically, yeah, you just replace command with control. So let's go ahead and do Option Command G. And then I'm gonna rename this to icon button. I think it's good practice to group all the buttons together. So we're gonna call this button and then icon button. So when you're looking for your buttons, they're all in one space. That's why you put the button / at the beginning. So let's create this to turn this into a component, and you do that by pressing this this 4 diamonds thing at the top. Or what you could also do is do Option Command K, but I think it's just safer to do it this way. But anyway, we have our icon button. So I guess I'll leave this here. And then now we have to look into what our next component is. So our next component is this the status bar. So let's go ahead and create that. So the space between the status bar is 23, or the space between the icons and the status bar is 23. So let's create, let's just put these icons together, or I'm just gonna grab it and then turn it into a component because it's the easier thing to do. I'm gonna drag this across, so here we are. Now, let's turn this into a component. We're gonna use the same method, so Command Option G to bring this together in a frame. And we want to rename this, so I'm just gonna rename it to status bar. And then let's turn this into a component. So there we have it, our component is ready. Now let's look at what else is next. So let's go ahead with this date bar. So the date bar consists of a date here, and then a date here, and then these 2 dashes. So let's go ahead and just take this because I'm lazy. And let's bring this across. Okay. So this actually is probably not the best thing that I should have done. So I have this on top of this. But if I ever change the numbers here, you can see that these slashes don't move with it. So let's just go ahead and fix that. And the way we're gonna fix that is that I'm gonna cut this, and then I'm gonna paste it back in, and then we're gonna space it nice and even, at a nice even distance from these 2 slashes. So it turns out it's 19 pixels away from the slash. What we're gonna do is we're gonna turn this into an auto layout layer, and just to make things easy for us later, I'm gonna rename this to slashes. And then let's turn this whole thing into an auto layout. Now the way I'm doing this is holding Shift A. Oh, okay. And as you can see, this moved up. We'll fix that later, but let's rename this to date right. Now let's fix this by going over here, and under auto layout we have alignment and padding on the right side. I'm going to click on this, and you can see that there is this these 3 blue lines at the top. You can either choose center or center or bottom. So we're gonna go with bottom. Actually, this is now lower than we initially wanted it to be. So let's go into our auto layout and just resize the height of this a bit, and there we have it. Now it's in line like it should be. And now we also have this left label. Actually, let's rename this to right label. And let's rename this to, I guess, center. And then rename this to right. And then I guess we'll just rename this. We'll leave it at left label. Okay, now let's turn this whole thing into an auto layout component by holding Shift A, and then let's rename this to date bar. And now it's ready to be turned into a component. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so now this is a component. If you wanted to use auto layout, sorry, I'm gonna drink because I keep coughing. Okay, let's replace this combo with a shift combo. We don't need the command, we just need shift, and this is A. So if you want to use auto layout, hold shift A. Okay, now what's next on our list of components? Let's see. Okay, so this background grid. Now the background grid is actually pretty fun to make, so let me show you how that's done. Okay, so we're gonna go into a bit more of a complicated step, and we're gonna need the screen frame to be down. So let's put this down. I have an iPhone 10, so I'm just gonna set it to 10. Now over here, you can change to landscape or portrait mode. We need it to be in landscape because everything in the TVA app or the TemPad is landscape. So yeah, so basically we have this. Now let's call this our I don't know if it's a TemPad or a TempPad, but let's just say TemPad. Okay. Now we want to set a grid, and this will help us later on. Okay, so the grid if you don't know what a grid is, let me just steal this. And actually no. So I've already set up a grid for our TemPad. It's ready in my set of grids, but I think this is an important step that I want you guys to learn how to do, so we'll go through how to do that. But basically this is the grid. Essentially it creates lines and you can bind boxes to them. And as you can see, these red lines go horizontally and vertically, and you can use those as references to pinpoint the different things that, it's to pinpoint your shapes to these references basically. They also help when you're trying to figure out your design spacing. Okay, but basically, we're gonna create this, and I will show you how to do that. So, in order to do this, we are going to just remove this first. Let's go ahead and remove that. Actually, let's have one with it and then have one without it, so I have a reference and we can go back and forth. Okay, so let's detach this one. And as you can see, this is broken up into two main layouts, and then one minor and another minor. So basically what we're gonna do is, we know we have 16 columns or 16 rows. And so we're gonna set the count to 16 because that's how many we need. And we're gonna put spacing from the edge of 16. When I chose this, it was just based off of best practice. A lot of apps use a 16 pixel spacing from the edge, so I just set mine to 16 as well. So let's do that. So we add our grid. By default, it's gonna give you this 8 pixel grid. We're gonna change that to rows, and from the rows I'm going to create 16, and then our margin or the padding from the side is also 16, and then this gutter is 2, so it's how wide you want the spaces between your grids to be. So I'm going to set that to 2, and this is basically what this is. So this is the margin, 16. This is the gutter 2 pixels, and there are basically 16 of these lines. So that's what these numbers all mean. Okay, I'm gonna delete this now. Now we're gonna do the same thing with the columns. The columns are a bit different. It's not 16 pixels, but it is actually, let's see, 28 pixel margin. So let's set this up. The gutter is the same. The count is 33 because there are 33 squares in the TemPad interface. So let's add that. Okay, 33 columns. Let's put this in. 33. What was the margin? 28. And the gutter was 2. Okay, so basically this is what we need, and this is what we have, and it was perfectly fine. Okay, now that we have this grid, we can start adding in. We can start to add in this, basically this border. I've locked it. Have I locked it? No, I have not locked it, but. Yeah, we basically want to add in this border. Now, the border does not align to the grid because it's supposed to be like the house that the grid is contained in. So let's just, we'll paste this in first, and then maybe I'll explain a bit as to why this is the spacing that I used. So from the edge, the spacing is, what was it? It is basically 19 from this edge, and then it is 99 from this edge. Generally, there's no rule to this. I just thought this is the spacing that worked best, so it's what I went with. So if you want like a good explanation, you're gonna need to find it somewhere else. But yeah, we're just recreating a design that we don't have the actual dimensions to, so it doesn't matter as long as it looks the part. I think we can get away with it. Okay, and now is the interesting part. So I'm gonna hide the grid real quickly, and you can do that by holding Control G. On a Windows, I'm not sure how you do that, but on a Mac you hold Control G. Okay. So this grid is basically composed of a bunch of lines that go across, or 33 lines that go across, and 36, oh sorry, no, not 33. There are actually 2 lines on the outside, and then on the inside there are 32. So there are actually 34 lines in this, there are 34 lines going from left to right, and there are actually 17 lines going from top to bottom. So we're gonna wanna recreate that, and how do we do that? Well, here we have our screen again. I'm gonna bring up our grid, and now we're gonna recreate the lines that go across for all of these. So I'm gonna hold P and just put a point on one corner and then another point on the other corner. I'm just gonna click enter. So P basically lets you create lines or shapes by dropping points, and that's basically what we did. So I'm gonna go ahead and change this to 2 because that's the size of our gutter. So originally when I designed the existing TemPad design, I didn't move this back a pixel because I just didn't think about it. But I should have moved it back a pixel because then my lines would align perfectly with what's in the grid. But I didn't, so we're gonna fix that mistake now. So basically I put one line here and then another line on the other side. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so we're gonna move this back 1 as well. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna set the color. Actually, we don't actually need to set the color because we're gonna set the color later. So let's just select the 2. Now, we can go in and create 32 lines in between them. It's perfectly fine. It's just a bit tedious. So I'm going to use a plugin that makes this process a lot faster. And that plugin is called Blending Me. So let's open up Blending Me. And what Blending Me does, it basically lets you set a count of objects or a count of blends that will appear between the two shapes or lines that you created. So let's change this to 32 instead of the default 20, and we'll click create. And now we have these evenly spaced lines from our first line to the end line. And these basically make up the vertical lines in our TemPad design. So I'm going to select all of these and just group it so it's easy to manage. Wait, let me click done first. Oh, okay. I'm going to group it. I think I pressed. What? Okay, well, as it turns out, grouping does not work very well in Opera.js. So I'm just going to right click and group selection. Okay, now let's redo the same thing. Actually, no, let's rename this first to vertical lines. And then let's do the same thing for the horizontals. So I'm going to lock this first, just temporarily. And then let's put down our horizontal line. So this will start here and go across. Actually, this should go all the way to the end because this will make up our container at the end, or our grids at the end, and we don't want this random corner here. Now I think as I was scrolling through, these aren't perfect. That's just the nature of using screenshots that are not realistic, but I think it's good enough for our purposes. I've already set this as 2, so let's bring this up 2, or bring this up 1, and then let's put another one at the bottom. Oops. Okay. Okay, so this is the issue with using a browser. I mean, the dark mode is great, but the zooming stuff is kind of weird and annoying. But yeah, I think the trade-off is worth it. Okay. So let's just move this into position. Okay. Now let's add our, oh no, okay. Okay, now let's use our Blending Me plugin again. I'm gonna actually do a shortcut to get the Blending Me plugin up. I'm gonna hold Command/, as you saw in the corner. And we're gonna just type in Blending Me, and this basically lets you search for different plugins in Figma or different actions as well. So let's create this. It's not 17. Done. Cancel. It's actually supposed to be 15. So let's try that again. Okay. There we go. That's much better. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to put this into a group again, like we did earlier with the horizontal lines. I mean the vertical lines, and let's call this horizontal lines. So group selection, rename horizontal lines. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna unlock this, or we're gonna select the 2 and we're gonna group them together or make them intersect using this thing. So we're gonna do a union selection. And this might take a while because there are a lot of lines processed, but we basically got it. And let's rename this to grid. And let's change the fill to orange. Now I'm gonna just quickly search my orange. You can do your own sort of color selection or create your own color styles. But yeah, that's up to you. And then we're gonna set the orange glow. Now, let's see, there seems to be an issue with the way our grid. Okay, well, we're back to square one. I'm gonna cheat a little bit and just take the grid that I already created as a benchmark, and then we will fix it later. So I'm just gonna copy this. And we'll drop it into here. Okay, so our grid is here. I'm gonna go ahead and leave these effect styles there. But let's go back to the point that we were at earlier, which is, let me hide this grid, adding the fill to the shape. So I'm gonna unlock this. So be careful that this is unlocked. You can't really see on when I'm in dark mode. Let me just try and show you real quick. First I could just, alright, so as you can see, it's locked. We're gonna unlock it. And I'm gonna return back to dark mode because this is burning my eyes. Okay. So what we did here originally was look for our, set our orange. Let me search that again. Okay, and then what you'll notice when you put this all together is that this orange is way too harsh. And the way the LCD works in the reference is that it kinda, or like the way the grid works in the reference is that it kinda starts very strong towards the edges, and then it's a bit more, or a bit softer, or a bit darker in the middle. So we're gonna recreate that sort of effect, and the way to do that is by turning this into a gradient. So I'm gonna break my color style, and we're gonna just turn this into a gradient. So you can basically move these around. Actually, let me undo that. I'm going to change this color from this orange to a bit more of a, actually no, the orange can stay the same. What we need to change is the opacity. So the opacity, maybe it's like 70% in the middle as compared to, okay, 70 might be too light. Maybe it's 50% in the middle, and then whatever percentage on the ends. I'm gonna do this a bit so that it's more even towards the middle. So like there's a space within the middle that is darker. And then it blends into being a brighter orange towards the edges. So maybe to make this a bit easier to visualize as well, let's just turn this into a dark background. Okay, so there we go. So now we can see that the color is a bit more close. What I did in the other screen as well is that I changed this to decrease the opacity, as you can see here. This might be a bit too light, so maybe we change this to 20. Okay, I think this looks pretty good. I'm gonna lock this because we don't wanna move it around. Now, what I also did earlier when I originally made this is that I also set this rectangle, which is the rectangle that the TVA logo is housed in. How I did this was I basically just added a rectangle to our grid union. And then, yeah, it'll take in the colors that are being used by the grid, and I think that works pretty well. I think this looks perfectly fine. But yeah, that's basically what I did. We're gonna lock this though, and we're gonna continue and move on with our design. Okay, now that we have our grid, let's go over and look at what's next. So what's next is, let's just start by placing this logo in. So I already have the TVA logo here. All we really have to do is drag it in and drop it over our little box over here. So let me just drop this in. Okay, it's perfect. So that's done. Let's see what's next. We want to create this this menu. So let's go ahead and create this menu. Now, I'm gonna just go ahead and show you guys a preview. So I think it's starting to look pretty good. So I think at this stage we can start showing off our proto, or we can start showing this off. So as we design. So now we're just gonna start designing, and you can see the updates happen on the right side of the screen. So let's go into creating this navigation, so or this menu. So what I did was I looked at the number of squares that these things fall under, so we're gonna do the same thing. This is basically 3 squares down and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll say 6 from the right, and then we'll put this in. So let's just type away. What do we start with? Action list. Whoops, my fingers are not placed properly. Okay, now let's bring up our toggle, and we're gonna make sure that this is using the text style that we already defined. So H1 title, 3 down, and then, or is it 3 down like this? Yeah, 3 down like this, and then 6 from the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's not right. I gotta count it again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, okay, I wasn't wrong. Oh, wait, the third one down. So 2 from the top, not 3 from the top. Okay. So let's go ahead and move this up 1 square. Okay, and then 6 squares, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so we're basically done with this. Let's go ahead and add our fill. Actually, we can do this at the end. What we want to add next is the select. Let's change this to left line first. Select. What did it say? I don't remember. Select program, and then it's options, run program, clear cache. Okay, got it. Options, 1. So Figma has bullet points now, so just make sure that you're not using bullet points. Yeah, make sure you're not using bullet points. because this interface is a very old one and it does not use bullet points. So we have options. The next one is run program. And then the next one is 3 clear cache. Okay, so now we want to add the color to this. So these ones are all the same color. Actually, no, before we add the color, we need to add those random lines. So I'm just going to click P again and add the lines here. So I think they kind of go halfway up. Let's change this fill to, let's change this stroke to white. I usually just like typing F because F is the hex code for white. And then I think the width is actually 3, so we're gonna set it to 3. And then what I did earlier was I set it on each one of these corners, so let's just do the same thing. I think there were 4, we can fix it later if it wasn't. Okay. Now let's set the color of these to, oh, I forgot another thing. The select had a line under it. Now, line usually indicates which one you're on, or like what option you're on, but because this is converted from a desktop UI to a mobile UI, some things are still left over. Okay, but anyway, let's change this color to our orange. Actually, you know what? It's all orange, so let's just change all of it to orange. Okay, these lines have to be dealt with individually, so let's go ahead and change this to 80, or my orange color. But then these ones are actually lighter, or the opacity is reduced, so we're just going to go ahead and reduce the opacity of these. What was it? Maybe 50? Does that look accurate? 50%? Sure, that looks accurate. Okay, so now that we have that, we have our menu, we have our logo, we have our grid. Now we need to add in our status bar. So let's go ahead and add in our status bar. This one should be pretty straightforward. Let's just go in and make sure it's fitted properly. I think it's 2 squares from the bottom. And we want to align it to the left. Okay, there we go. And then our date bar is at the very bottom, so that one's straightforward. We just got to make sure it fits in properly. Okay, so then the type is aligned to the bottom. And now we add in our button. So this is the fun part. So let's just drop these in. Now, whoever designed this UI did not really think about the buttons overlapping. So you'll see that things aren't all a standard size. But anyway, we have our time door button there. And then we have our miss minutes button here. There's not really much space between them. And then we have our 2 buttons at the bottom, so let's add those in as well. So as you can see, there is a bit of an overlap on the buttons right there. We'll live with what we have. Well, yeah, before we continue, let's just check the spacing again, because I'm not sure. Okay, so this is 1 block from above, 1 block between them, and then 1 block from below. Okay, clear enough to me. So let's do that. Okay, let's align this to that bottom. Okay, there we go. Okay, now that we have this, we can start changing the labels and then changing the icon. So this one was time door. This one was Miss Minutes, who may or may not be the villain of the story. This one was settings. And the final one is directory. Okay, so now what we're gonna do next is we're gonna change these icons. So we'll start with Miss Minutes, and I already have the Miss Minutes icon set up. And then the next one will be our settings, so let's change our settings. And then the next one will be directory, so let's set our directory icon. Okay, and there we have it. We have our home done. Look at that. Now look at this. You know what we're missing? We're missing the glow on these. Or actually no, the unselected ones do not get a glow. We'll add a glow to these ones. So let me just go back in, add that glow, and then we'll be done. So add that glow. Okay, did we get everything? Let's go back and check it out. Okay, if I look at the design that I made beforehand, I also added this gradient to add more of the color bleed. Let's just go ahead and add that to our design so that it adds to the color bleed just a little bit. Okay, so what this is basically is a gradient with a little bit of opacity towards the end. So let's just recreate that for the other sides. I'm gonna flip this around, or rotate it, I guess. Just make sure it's unlocked so that you can actually make changes to it. And then I'm going to align this to the top. And there we have it. We have our light bleed. Now if we look at our app, boom, can you see this? Look at that, it's our app. And if I tap on this, I open up a time door. Okay, well it leads to the other screen. We'll do a second part where we walk through the other screens. I think we'll cap it here. We went through creating the home screen, we went through setting up your typography, creating components, and setting up your grid, which was something that originally I wasn't planning to do, but we did it anyway, and I hope you found that useful. And then we constructed our home screen. Now, if you like this video, let me know. If you want me to continue, let me know, and I'll build out the other screens with you as well. I think I'm still gonna do it. I might just not do it in a tutorial if you guys don't want to see that, but yeah, hopefully you found this useful. Let me switch to the main camera, or a camera. Thanks for sticking around to the end. That's all that we'll go through today. I'll probably make another video. I actually really enjoyed this, so I'm gonna publish the file to Figma community soon. Make sure to follow me on Figma community, just search @Izzy. And if you guys like this video, let me know, and I'll put out a part 2 where we go through the other screens. But until then, this is Izzy Muda. I'm gonna sign out. Leave a comment so I know if you liked it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna take my TemPad, or my iPhone based TemPad. Let's open up a time door. Okay, where should we go to? Earth 2077? You guys okay with that? Boom. Okay, let's go. I'm gonna sign out now. See you guys.